Can angels bring people new hearts? My guest says he knows it's true. Next on this edition of It's Supernatural.
Centuries have come and gone, offering wisdom and understanding throughout the ages. Today, there should be nothing beyond one's power to discover. And yet, the strange, unusual, and mysterious world of the supernatural defies understanding. Stay tuned for a unique and powerful investigation into a curious, undiscovered universe only on It's Supernatural.
Hello, I'm Sid Roth, your investigative reporter, and have you seen an angel? I have some guests that have not only seen angels, but they would not even be alive if it wasn't for angels. Dawn, in 1976, you're living in a trailer park in Sedalia, Missouri, and what happened?
Well, I had woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning with almost like the bed shaking and the wind howling outside the window. And I was terrified of storms, so I felt like maybe I needed to get up and check on things, but I was so scared I was afraid to move out of my bed. So I looked up the window and opened the curtains, and sure enough, the wind was knocking the trees down to the floor, to the ground, and I remember crawling back underneath the bed thinking, if God doesn't spare us, it's not going to be a pretty sight when it's done. And I felt like the Lord had told me, get up and look out the window again. I don't want to look out the window again, you know.
Pretty foolish. You don't want to see that. It's bad enough that it's happening.
Right. Am I going to look at it again? And I just felt like I needed to do what God had told me. I was obedient, and I looked out the window, and to my astonishment, I looked out and saw these huge, absolutely massive, white-robed beings, and their faces were so bright that I couldn't see them, but they had a hood on the top of their head, and they had a tie around their waist, and they were standing there holding hands, and you could almost see their hands gripping, and their backs were faced to the wind, and their front was faced to me. And I lay back down again in the bed, and I thought, did I just see that? And the Lord spoke to me again, told me to look again. I still want to show you something. And this time when I looked up, I saw the entire mobile home being encompassed by all these angels. Every one of them were holding hands. And they were 8 feet, 10 feet tall, somewhere around in there. They looked like basketball players, but their shoulders were as broad as football players. They were massive in size.
How did you feel when you saw this?
I was absolutely amazed, and I was like, am I seeing what I'm seeing?
Have you ever seen angels before?
No, I don't recall ever seeing an angel before.
So what happened to all that fear?
It absolutely left, and I just felt such a peace, an overwhelming peace that there was no more fear, that I didn't need to be scared of what the wind and the storm would do, because God had sent beings to protect me, and He loved me enough to do that for me.
How much damage occurred to your trailer?
Absolutely none. There was no damage whatsoever.
Now, if the angels were not there, what do you think would have happened?
Well, there were trees around us, and we lived on a gravel road, so the gravel was, when I looked out the window the first time, the trees were bending over, touching the ground, so they wouldn't have lasted very long and could have come through the windows of the mobile home. That's why I actually didn't want to look out the window, because I was afraid that one of the tree limbs was going to go flying through the window. And the mobile home was secured and tied down, but you could feel the mobile home moving, and the wind outside was making this freight train sound, and I was but God sent His protection in a form that I could see it, so that I would never be afraid of storms again.
But you ran into something actually even, I think, worse than the storm. Tell me about that.
Well, probably around 4 or 5 years ago, I was faced with some demonic activity going on in my home. And I wasn't quite for sure what I was supposed to do about it. But
yeah, you were an abused wife.
Yes, I was. for many years. And it seemed to get worse as the years go on, with the abuse growing and the violence getting worse. And I remember that during that time, there was never any way for us to know what we were going to deal with when he came home at night. One night it would be fine, the next night it would be horrible. Well, after many, many times of abuse, he got up one morning, couldn't find the keys to the car, and got irate. And when he got irate, I saw his eyes literally turn red, the pupils of his eyes turn red, and the fear that overwhelmed me was horrible. He got so angry that he wound up choking me, making a concussion, knocking me out. I remember trying to get out of the house at the time, and it was as if he would translate from one place to another place so quickly that I couldn't get out. And I remember him coming after me at the last minute, and I looked over and saw the Word of God, and I something inside me told me to pick up the Word, and I picked it up, I picked up the Word of God, and I put it up in front of me so that the Holy Bible read outward. And that's just the way I picked it up. And I picked it up and held it in front of me, and I just prayed in the Spirit, saying, God, please spare my life. Because I knew that I was not dealing with a human being. I was dealing with legions of demons inside this man. A
possessed human being.
Yes. And so it was if when I started praying, God stopped him in his tracks. He froze. He didn't move.
You mean he's coming towards you. You hold up the Bible facing him.
Yes.
And he froze.
And he froze.
You're not exaggerating.
No, I'm not exaggerating.
He froze.
He didn't move. I don't even think he breathed. He just stopped, and he didn't do anything. And his eyes got really big, as if he was seeing something behind me. And I don't know what it actually was, but as soon as that happened, after he froze and he looked, he wound up collapsing in the chair right beside him. He just collapsed.
Well, what do you think that he saw behind her? I think he saw some of those same angels that protected her in the trailer park. I want to go to Janie in the control room. Janie, you saw an angel also. Tell me about that.
Well, Sid, I used to be a school teacher in a Greek Orthodox school, and all the children during the summer would go to Greece, and they would come back with bugs. So I was teaching them, and I